Hola, and welcome back to Estrella Spanish, a Spanish learning curriculum for all learning levels. My name is Laya, and today we're going to be talking about question words, or interrogative words in Spanish. Now, these are one of the most essential parts of the language because question words, or as we call them in Spanish, palabras interrogativas, are used in all sorts of different types of conversations. These little words are absolute game changers for your Spanish conversations because, think about it. When you meet someone new, or when you're traveling, or when you're shopping, or even when you're just curious about something, you need to ask questions. And the best part is that once you master these question words, you'll be able to get information about literally anything in Spanish. So let's take our time and really understand each one. But before we jump into the individual words and do more of a deep dive, let's just talk about something super important for understanding these question words, which is how Spanish questions work a little bit differently from English questions. So first of all, in Spanish, we use upside down question marks at the beginning of your question sentence and regular question mark at the end. So it's going to look like this. You can see on the slide, we have the upside down question mark as the opening, then question, then the normal closing question mark at the end. And so this just kind of helps you know that there's a question coming right from the start, but this is a convention in Spanish. And so additionally, you can also notice that every question word in Spanish is going to have an accent mark on it when they're used in questions. So a lot of these question words, this is a little confusing, so let me explain. A lot of these question words have an equivalent that does not have an accent. That means it's not a question word. It's used in a different context. For example, you'll see como coming up later. Como without an accent is used as a different word, but como with an accent is used as a question word. And that'll make a little bit more sense when we explain question words a little bit more in depth. But yeah, so this is really important for pronunciation and for meaning, because as I said, these words have different meanings when they have an accent or not. So let's just remember, question words means has accent marks. Okay, perfect. So now here's something really cool about Spanish question words. So they often come at the very beginning of the sentence, just like in English, but unlike English, Spanish is a little bit more flexible with word order in some situations. So sometimes you may hear some variations of the order of words. The question word might come a little later. But okay, perfect. So now that we've understood the Spanish question structure, we can move on to talking about specific question words a little bit more in depth. So let's start with probably the most useful, most versatile question word in Spanish, and this is going to be que. So que means what, and you will use it constantly. Now keep in mind, there is a que that does not have an accent, and that is not a question word. But que with an accent on the I is a question word. So the pronunciation, as I already said, is que. It's really nice and short, so let's just practice. Repeat after me. Que. Perfect, awesome. Okay, so here is how que is going to work in sentences. So for example, let's have ¿qué es esto? Which means, what is this? Or we have, ¿qué quieres? What do you want? Or, ¿qué hora es? What time is it? So these are some examples of how to use que as a question word in Spanish. It's a really versatile one. When you don't know what question word to use, you're usually going to use que. Now also notice that que is the same no matter what comes after it. So it's one of the easier question words because it never changes form, no matter if you're using like a feminine or masculine or plural or singular noun or anything after that. It's not going to change. Que is just que. So now let's move on to the next question word, which is going to be cuál or cuáles. So this depends on if it's plural or not. So cuál means which when you're talking about one thing, and then cuáles means which when you're talking about multiple things. So yeah, basically when you're trying to select multiple things from a group. So as I already said, it's pronounced cuál and cuáles. So let's practice. Repeat after me. Cuál, cuáles. Perfect. So this kind of sounds like an English Q, but it's actually a C in Spanish with a U after it. So here's the key difference from English. So when we use cuál, we're going to use it in some places where English would use what. So cuál can sometimes be used instead of que as a what situation. So for example, we're going to have ¿cuál es tu nombre? So this is what is your name. Technically, it literally translates to which is your name, but in Spanish, it's convention to say ¿cuál es tu nombre instead of ¿qué es tu nombre? Now, another example, we have ¿cuál prefieres? This is which do you prefer? typically out of a group, right? So if you have the distinction between cuál and qué is when you have a group to choose from. So if I have, let's say, a red, a blue, and a green pen, and you're saying, which pen would you prefer? ¿Cuál bolígrafo prefieres? You're going to use cuál because it's which out of the group. But you can use qué if it's like not out of a specific group. Now another example for cuál in a sentence is going to be ¿Cuáles son tus colores favoritos? Which are your favorite colors? Because there's a limited range. So remember, cuál is used for one thing and cuáles multiple things. And the es ending tells us that it's plural and referring to more than one noun. So now let's move on to the next question word. We're going to use quién and quiénes, which mean who. So for people, we're going to use quién for one person and quiénes for multiple people. That es ending, similar to in cuáles, means plural. So pronunciation, quién, quiénes. So let's try it. Repeat after me. Quién, quiénes. Perfect. Okay, so some examples. We have quién es ella? Who is she? Then there's quién viene a la fiesta, which is who is coming to the party. And then lastly, let's say, ¿Quiénes son tus amigos? Who are your friends? Plural, because friends is plural, so we use quiénes. So, yeah, awesome. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is going to be ¿dónde?, which means where. So as I said, pronunciation is ¿dónde?. So repeat after me, ¿dónde? Perfect. So ¿dónde is going to be used in location questions. So this is going to be your go-to for when you're asking where something is. So here are some pretty useful examples. How about ¿dónde vives? Where do you live? Then there's ¿dónde está el baño? People use this one a lot, and it's where is the bathroom? Then there's ¿dónde compraste eso? Where did you buy that? These are all very useful words to use in questions when you're talking to other people. And that's it for ¿dónde? So let's move on to the next one. This is also super important. For time-related questions, we're going to use ¿cuándo? So as I said, the pronunciation is ¿cuándo? So let's try it. Repeat after me. ¿Cuándo? Perfect. So some examples for this, we can say ¿cuándo es tu cumpleaños? When is your birthday? There's also ¿cuándo llegaste? When did you arrive? And ¿cuándo vamos? When are we going? Perfect. So next up, we have ¿por qué?, which means why. So as I said, pronunciation is going to be ¿por qué? So repeat after me. ¿Por qué? Perfect. So notice this is two different words. If it was just one word with no accent, it's going to mean because. So keep in mind, when you're saying a question word, ¿por qué?, there's the accent on the E and the K, and they're two separate words, por and qué. So we're going to use this question word or question phrase for reasons and explanations. So let's do some examples. We have, ¿por qué estudias español? Why do you study Spanish? Then there's, ¿por qué estás triste? Why are you sad? ¿Por qué no vienes? Why aren't you coming? So, yeah, perfect. So when answering these questions, a good thing to remember is you're going to use ¿por qué?, one word with no accent. It's just P-O-R-Q-U-E. ¿Por qué? Is going to mean because. So when you're answering a question that uses ¿por qué?, you can say ¿por qué algo? And that'll make more sense when you're speaking in more conversation. But let's just give an example. So for example, if I asked you, ¿por qué estudias español? Why do you study Spanish? I could respond, porque me encanta la lengua. Because I love the language. So you can kind of see that difference there. But for now, let's focus on the question words. Moving on to our next question word. We're almost done. This one is ¿cómo?, the one I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And this means how. So again, pronunciation is ¿cómo? So repeat after me. ¿Cómo? Perfect. So we're going to use this for manner or method or condition. So for example, ¿cómo estás? How are you? This is really commonly used. Then there's ¿cómo te llamas? What's your name? Technically, this directly translates to how do you call yourself, but that's going to be another one of those situations where it's just convention to say ¿cómo te llamas? As what's your name? And then another example is ¿cómo llegaste aquí? How did you get here? Perfect. So now let's move on to our last section of question words, which are going to be cuánto, cuánta, cuántos, and cuántas, which mean how much or how many. These are our quantity words, and they're a bit more complex because they change based on gender and number. So let's break it down. So cuánto is going to be how much for masculine singular nouns. Cuánta is going to be how much for feminine singular nouns. Cuántos is going to be how many, masculine plural, and cuántas is going to be how many, feminine plural. So let's do some examples. ¿Cuánto cuesta? How much does it cost? ¿Cuánta agua quieres? How much water do you want? ¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? It literally translates to how many years do you have, but in Spanish, that's how you ask how old someone is. ¿Cuántos años tienes? And then lastly, ¿cuántas personas vienen? How many people are coming? So the key here is matching the gender and the number of the noun you're asking about with the correct question word. So now let's do some practice. We're going to put everything all together. So let's practice with some real world scenarios. I'm going to give you a situation and you're going to think about which question word you would use. So let's begin here with scenario number 1. So you are going to be at a restaurant and you want to ask the price of something. So which question word are you going to use? I'll let you pause and think about it. Exactly. So here's the answer. You are going to use ¿cuánto cuesta? How much does it cost? So again, feel free to pause the video if you need some more time to think about it before I show the answer. So now let's move on to scenario number 2. You're lost and you need directions. Which question word are you going to use? Perfect. You're going to use ¿dónde? ¿Dónde está something? Where is wherever you're looking for. Now let's move on to scenario number 3, and this is going to be our last scenario. Now this is one of the examples we did, so try to remember. You want to know someone's reason for learning Spanish. Which question word are you going to use? Exactly. You're going to use ¿por qué? So, for example, ¿por qué estudias español? Why are you studying Spanish? So, excelente, you have just learned the foundation of asking questions in Spanish. This is not easy, so good job on making it through this video. And these question words will open so many doors for you in conversations in Spanish. But remember, the key to this is practicing. So try to use at least one new question word every day in your Spanish conversations or practice sessions or classes. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Estrella Spanish for more Spanish lessons like this one. Hasta luego!